We're moving on to the offseason. What do the Celtics need? How can they go get it? What does Ime Udoka want from this offense? Going to break it all down with Keith Smith right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you, as always, for making this show part of your daily routine, Monday through Friday. This show is here for you free daily. Everywhere you get your podcasts, you get this show. And you also get it on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the show on YouTube. And thank you, everybody, for helping the show across 7,000 subscribers. Big milestone. Let's keep it going. Let me see how quickly we can get to 8, if we can do that by the end of the summer. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, and I was one of the media voters for the 75th anniversary team. And we are now off into the off-season. Yesterday was a mailbag podcast. Today we're getting the season kind of like the summer reset. We're getting into the tools that are available, all that stuff, and we're going to do so with the only person I can think of to do that with, Keith Smith. Spot Track, Celtics blog, just everywhere. Ubiquitous, I would say, Keith.
Yeah, the only person you could think of, the only person who said yes, something like that. I get it. It's all good.
No, man. When it comes to setting this thing and the salary cap and all that, I think everybody knows you're one of the go-to guys. So
I appreciate it.
So and this is Keith. This is a super important summer for the Celtics. This is. I wrote about, I did my own kind of like primer on Boston Sports Journal, and I characterized it as maybe the most critical summer in a decade for the Celtics. I don't know if, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. It's weird because it feels like the Hayward Kyrie one became that. Almost just, but I don't think we were planning for. I know we were planning the Hayward stuff because, Lord knows, I think we had those conversations for about 2 years running before it actually happened. But then, yeah, it turned into that. But yeah, I mean, this team was. I get it. Maybe some people are still licking their wounds a few days after, but they were close. Like they got to Game 6 of the finals. You were right knocking on that door. A little bit better here, a little bit better there, and that we might have been at a parade today. But
yep.
it kind of is what it is. With that part of it. But now it's about everything we've been told. If they're a contender, well, they're a contender, and now it's time to see all that stuff through.
Yeah. So this is why it's so critical. You've got your two pillars in Tatum and Brown. They're 24 and 25 years old. You've got a proven roster that has made it to the NBA Finals. And we know that the East is going to improve. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get the same road. It's going to be interesting. Who knows what's going to happen with Brooklyn, because that seems to be falling apart.
Oh
but
gosh.
Other teams are still going to be in Boston's way. So, but the bottom line is Boston is a championship contender just by virtue of basically being able to run that back, but also having tools to add to the bench. So my contention, I'll throw this out to you, is that filling out the bench is the priority. I'm not one of those people who believes like, oh, you got to get a point guard because of all of those turnovers down the stretch in the finals. I don't think that they were a starting point guard away from that. I think they were a solid bench away and more trusted role players away from that, because that would have taken the pressure off of Brown and Tatum. You take the pressure off of those guys, you can take some minutes off of their legs. All of a sudden, some of those drives don't get blocked. Some of them are finishes. Maybe they have guys that they trust to pass the ball to because guys are hitting shots. They're not missing shots. I personally believe it's the role players that need to be improved around Tatum and Brown. And I guess that involves everybody but those two. But I don't know. Let's just start big picture. What do you think the approach to the offseason should be?
Yeah, it unfortunately may not make for the best show because we're kind of on the same page. I'm not going to come here and spout off a bunch of hot takes about go get a pure point guard, a floor general, and
this is a hot take free zone.
that's it, right? Here's my thing with that. Just and I'll get this out of the way very quickly. I don't. When people say that, then you ask them who. Then the conversation tends to dry up and die to me when they say that, because I'm like, oh, who are you talking about? And it invariably, everybody says, well, a Chris Paul kind of guy. All right, well, Chris Paul is one of one, and there isn't another Chris Paul. If you go back and look through the assist leaders at the top of the NBA this past season, it's Chris Paul and Tyrese Halliburton for point guards who aren't score first point guards. Every single other player is not a point guard, or they are a score first player who happens to get assists because their usage is so high, which we've seen kind of become the two, I call it a two-way playmaker kind of guy. They can play make for themselves and for others. So that is, that's where that whole thing falls apart. Now, can you improve that position? Sure. But I think that lends towards what you're saying is improve the overall depth of the roster. My single biggest need for this team, I think, at this point, barring something coming out, knock on wood, that Robert Williams needs more surgery or something like that, which we have no reason to believe that because we haven't heard that. Season ended 4 days ago. We probably would have by now.
Yep.
So my thought is get a 3-and-D wing, and barring a 3-and-D wing, just a wing who can play rotation minutes at a bare minimum in the regular season and in the early rounds of the playoffs. Because everybody cuts down their rotation as you get a little bit deeper into the playoffs. So if that player either can't hold up offensively or defensively, and you end up losing him out of your rotation when you cut it from 10 to 9 to 8 to whatever, that's fine. Ideally, that guy would be able to stick and stay in the rotation. But that's my biggest need for this team, mostly because I think Tatum and Brown, they never once said it, but I'll make the excuse for them. I think they were pretty worn out by the end of the season. I think both of them, some of that sloppiness, I think was just created from heavy, tired legs, tired mentally. Tatum's minutes, if you combine regular season and playoffs compared to everybody else, insane numbers, that he played. And just getting somebody who, and even it would be nice on that Tuesday in January in Orlando to give one of those two guys the day off. It's hard because neither one of them ever wants to take a day off. But that's an Ime Udoka issue. That's where, you tell them, maybe to save them from themselves, you need a day off. But that's my single biggest need. And then, we can get into other stuff. But I'm with you. Round out the depth a little bit more. I don't think this needs a big overhaul. I don't think you need to go chasing a, Bradley Beal or a major free agent. That just doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense to me either. I think this is a team that's mostly in a good spot because their defense is going to be elite no matter what. Now, I think concerns heading into this offseason are, how much do the Celtics think the injury issues are going to be a problem? I'm looking at obviously Robert Williams, but on the flip side of the Robert Williams thing, he played more minutes and more games and by far than he has in the past. And he held up mostly well until he tore the meniscus. So, and that can happen to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not willing to say that that's a Rob injury prone thing, but however, there's a history. He has a history. Jaylen Brown has a history of the hamstring issues. How concerned are they about that's going to cost him 15 games a season? Mm-hmm. And then the third player is Al Horford, who is 36 and just played an incredible amount of minutes, more playoff minutes by far than he's ever played. And it's not that they're concerned necessarily about the injury, but you're going to have to treat him with kind of kid gloves a little bit. As far he's not going to, he shouldn't play back-to-backs this upcoming season. Like they should start to limit him in that so they can make sure that he ramps up appropriately later on in the season. So that colors how I approach my offseason, because I agree with you. And like everybody wants a 3-and-D wing, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
are going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for that guy that can give Tatum and Brown a little bit of a rest that you can trust. And any perimeter help, any kind of defensive, versatile perimeter help is going to be huge. But then I do think that they're going to probably want to find some sort of serviceable big. And now the question is, I'll pose this question and then take a break and let you chew on it. Is Daniel Tice that guy? Or I think that one of the possibilities is that the Celtics could use Tice and say Aaron Nesmith this summer, plus a first round pick, and start to target somebody in that $14 to $15 million range to go along with their traded player exception, if that exists. But I think the Celtics have the ability to add multiple guys in that mid-teen range. I'll let you chew on that, Keith, for a second. You can come back with the answer. But first, I want to talk to people about PrizePicks, which is daily fantasy made easy. Now, basketball's over, so if you've been playing or thinking about playing daily fantasy with basketball, I know you're going to want to come back next season for this. But you can start on PrizePicks right now because it involves a ton of sports, every sport that's out there, really. You pick 2 to 5 players. It's an over-under on their projections. So you want Major League Baseball. You can get into soccer. You can get into WNBA. You pick 2 to 5 players. You can win up to 10 times on an entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers, which is great. And picks can be made in 60 seconds or less. So it's easy. It's safe. You get fast withdrawals, and you can get this award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Again, any prop that you can think of is available there on PrizePicks, and it allows mixed sport entries so you can mix in between. You know, college football is going to be coming up soon. College sports is going to be coming back in a couple of months. So it's all right there. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. You get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. But you got to use the code NBA. This is an exclusive offer for Locked On fans. Sign up today. Use the code NBA. $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. You got to check out our live NBA draft show. It's not enough for Locked On shows to just go cover the draft. They're going live on draft night. Locked On Celtics, unless they trade into the first round, which I don't expect. But 15 minutes after each pick, if you want to get perspective, all of these shows are going live on YouTube for immediate reaction. So you can go check out every show after every pick, the local expert. So subscribe to these shows so you know when they go live. Let's bring Keith back in. All right, pose a question to you before the break. The Celtics and Daniel Tice. I think Daniel Tice is an interesting guy because he makes like $8 million, and that's a lot for a third string center. I think he might be on the way out. What do you think about that possibility and how the Celtics might use his salary?
Oops, there we go. I got the mute button. I'm out of practice. It's all right. All right. So I'm with you on the Horford part of it. I think ideally too, not only not playing back-to-backs, but I think you'd like to keep him down probably close to 25 minutes per game.
Yeah, it's
this next season versus up around 30. I think Rob is, I think what we saw from him in the regular season is probably the top end, just given history of what we'll see from availability from him. I think Grant Williams has proven to be a very good, solid, dependable third big, but you need another guy, even if it's just for the regular season, just to cover yourself. Could it be Daniel Tice if they just kind of stand pat? Yeah, maybe. Clearly they like him. I think he's played better in Boston than he's played anywhere else. I think he fits a lot of what they want to do defensively. Yeah, there's issues against certain guys, but he hangs in there. He does his thing. He gives them a little bit of pop, a little bit of range from the outside. I think though, if you can go upgrade that spot, there's one of two ways to do it. Either you use the trade exception, the big one, or one of the two smaller ones, because it's a lot of serviceable bigs are within anywhere from the $5 to $15 million range on the that are available. Or you use the mid-level exception, roughly 6.4 million, and you go sign a big, or like you said, you could package Tice with something and trade him. I continue to believe that if this team really wants to maximize this and push things as far as they can, I want them to use a big chunk of that MM40 ATP, and I want them to use a large, if not all, of the taxpayer mid-level. But in order to do that, and I'm not trying to give ownership out here. I think everybody who listens to this show knows that's not the guy I am, but they're not going to go $20 million over the tax. It's just not going to happen. So that might mean Tice gets shipped off somewhere in a lower the tax versus a tax avoidance, just a lower the tax type of move. So I think that may be where we see that play out, this summer. Let's see. But yeah, if you could use him and then use Neesmith maybe to plus up the package and, a pick. Well, we'll see. I know people get a little squirrely about, we already traded a pick for Derek White and there's a pick swap and all that. But, for me, I want to maximize this window as best I can in the next 2 to 3 years to not only get back, but to hopefully get over the hump and win a title. So, yeah, but I'm with you. I think right behind the wing, the big is my next biggest need for this team this summer. Then I've got one more if you want to talk about it after. But I'm with you. I think you can use Tice to do something towards upgrading the rotation.
The tax, so they didn't pay the tax when it's all said and done. They missed it by $20,000 or something.
It's a little bit more than that, but they missed it by enough that they're not in it. Missing it is missing it. There's no room for horseshoes here. It's if you're out, you're out. So they did.
So as far as moving forward, they're not. I get what you're saying about the tax. We'll see. But I want them to swing. I want them to take the swing.
Same.
The way I see it is you've got that taxpayer mid-level 6.3, 6.4.
Yeah, almost 6.4.
So that you should use as much of that as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, okay, best case scenario, that's somebody who will take the whole thing that might have been willing to could have made more. I'm looking at maybe a Bruce Brown, who I don't know what his market would be, but probably more than 6.3. Mm-hmm. So my sales pitch to Brown would be this: we'll give you taxpayer mid-level 2 years. You're 25. Give us 2 good years. Win a ring, maybe 2. Who knows? How this goes, but he's the type of guy that the Celtics could use. At 27 years old, you hit the market having won a championship, and you hit the market in, I think that would put him to the new CBA, which would be the new TV money, which would be that new, all of a sudden this influx of money. So the pitch would be you're going to make a little bit less now, but if you do it right, you make more as a 27-year-old champion, key player and a champion. Then you go out and you make your $15 to $20 million because everybody's going to have money to spend. They're going to be we got to get this guy away from the Celtics. So that's my pitch to that type of guy. And then go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on Bruce Brown too. And then you have the benefit too of, hey, come home. Right? He's a Boston kid. So come home to Massachusetts and you'll do it here. And who knows? I mean, if we were having this conversation even 2 days ago, I said, the Nets aren't going to let him go. They need him, but who knows what's going on in Brooklyn? If that whole thing starts to crumble, some of those we all immediately jump to, what does Kevin Durant do? I tend to go to, all right, well, Bruce Brown, Patty Mills, Dick Claxton, some of these role players, they're probably looking at him being yeah, I'm not so sure this is where I want to be. So yeah, Bruce Brown, Gary Harris is another guy I like quite a bit, that I think could really fill that kind of role for the team if they want a little bit bigger. A guy I think who maybe you get and kind of sell on hey, you want to go the Otto Porter Jr. route of rehab your value, but also make a little bit more money. TJ Warren is a guy I've always kind of liked. Could give you some little bit of scoring pop at the forward position. There, he's not quite big enough. The guy I think who would be great for this team would be someone like Chris Boucher. He's almost like a younger, upgraded version of Tice.
Mhm.
Can play both the 4 and the 5. It's just, I don't know that they'll have enough money to
Yeah.
sign him. But in general, yeah, I think you and I are on the same page. You got to use the full taxpayer mid level.
I don't
Don't get me wrong. I want them to go 20 million into the
Oh,
tax.
yeah, totally.
Go super deep into it. I just think there is an upper bound. It's as much as, we're talking about billionaires here. I fully get it. And I know how much the team is worth. They're not the Warriors. They're not the Lakers. They're not the Nets. Like they're not probably going to pay, like the Warriors next year might pay $400 million in salary and tax next year. Like the Celtics are not going to do that. Like it's just not. And now they wouldn't because they're not going to have all those penalties. But I don't see them between tax and penalties paying $200 million salary. I think it's probably going to be slightly less than that. But maybe I think the good thing now is now everybody involved can hold them to. You said you'd pay for a contender, so it's awfully hard to argue anything but. Right. You can't say that they're not. And yeah, I think those targets, if I can real quick, you want me to give you my third need?
Yeah, hit me.
I think they need, now this goes counter to what I said earlier a little bit. I do think they need to add another guard, maybe a more of a kind of veteran point guard-ish. But the only reason why I say that is I worry it's about every other year that Marcus Smart misses a large chunk of time. It's just the way he plays, the stuff he puts himself through. Now, this year, he played in 71 regular season games, plus a whole bunch of playoff games. The things he puts himself through, I'm worried after almost 100-game season for him that he may be bumped and bruised beyond being able to play sometimes. I like Derek White. I think you slide him right in, you just plug along. But then I like Peyton Pritchard. I'm a big Peyton Pritchard guy, but I would just like somebody who's a little bit more run the offense, maybe a little bit more if you need him to. It's funny. I've been kind of saying this is like the idealized version of what Jeff Teague was supposed to be a couple years ago, right? Just that third veteran guard who can play if you need him to, but he might go weeks without playing. But when you need him to play, you plug him in and off you go. So that's kind of my hope. A little bit is that's that what I would say would be the other position of need on the roster.
I think that's something you could probably fill in with a veteran minimum.
Yeah.
Type of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I think they could really just remake the back end of their bench where they added a bunch of talent. I don't know how many of these guys are going to come back. Like
the bench vibes group.
Yeah, like that's. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. I think the Celtics have solidly moved into veteran help. Like there are stages to all of this. Their two-way spot is meaningless at this point, unless you're just hoping to strike oil. And you say, oh, wow, oh my God, this guy actually can help. And you get you find a Max Strus out there, that type of guy. But this is why I am going to be very casual about the first round picks for the next couple of years, because there's no way that a player drafted at 20 to 30, wherever the Celtics may fall in there, is going to be somebody that comes in and makes an immediate impact or has a chance, because Ime is going to want win now guys, and that's just very rare to find down there. So those are going to be the picks that you're going to end up attaching. Like I'm okay with next year's number one pick or next year's first round pick attach it to Daniel Tice and Aaron Nesmith and say, okay, go get somebody. By the way, I'll take a break for a second here, but every year, every summer, I attach myself, my brain attaches itself to one concept, and I hammer that all summer long. And I can already tell you that it's going to be a pick Tice and Nesmith, or a pick Tice plus contract to go get basically two players in that $15 to $17 million range. Like my plan is get somebody to take a discount on the TPE on the mid-level. Use your full 17 million TPE or as much of it as you can. And first round pick, Tice plus contract gets you 15 million. And now you've added 3 impactful players to your bench, along with Grant Williams, along with Peyton Pritchard, along with Derek White. Now you've got depth. I don't know who those players are, but that's my hope. And it might be one player too many, but I'd rather have one player too many. I think that's going to be a big priority. Tatum, Brown, Horford, Rob, I think these guys are going to have to play limited minutes November, December, January. They're going to need to go 10 deep. So let me let's take a second here for me to talk about Rock Auto, and then we'll get back to Keith to talk a little bit more about the offseason here. RockAuto.com, there are a million cars out there, tons of different makes and models. Even the one car that you like that you have, there's all of these different versions of that car now, and each one has a different little something different. So it's impossible for these places on the strip mall to stock everything. So that's why you got to go to Rock Auto. They will have all of the stuff that you need. And why spend 30 to 50 to 100% more for the same parts? You want something complicated? Are you good with cars? Not me. But if that's you can go to Rock Auto and save a lot of money. My partner on Locked On NBA, Jake Madison, is good with cars. He uses Rock Auto all the time, saves himself a ton of money fixing up classic cars, all of that stuff. Me, I'm a wipers and floor mats kind of guy, and that's testing my limits, and I'm going to get that at rockauto.com as well. So whatever it is, brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, go to rockauto.com. When you go there and you go through their expansive catalog and see all of the different options that you have, I'm sure you're going to buy something. Make sure you write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? That's how they know we sent you. It's the only way they know we sent you. So write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? It's an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. All right, let's wrap things up here with Keith. I wrote on Boston Sports Journal, one of the questions here that will frame, we're talking about what we think, but I think the biggest question that frames the entire Brad Stevens plan is, what is Ime Udoka's actual preferred style of offense? We saw him with what he had, and he's running a lot through Tatum and running a lot through Brown. Okay, fine. Was that mostly out of necessity? Does he want a pure playmaking point guard? Does he want that? Is he willing to sacrifice Marcus Smart's defense for offense or different kind of what does Ime ideally want his offense to be? And if it's not what the Celtics have, then I think he's going to tell Brad, hey, can you get this for me? Because this is my vision.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. My guess would be, and I have not asked him about this, and I've been on all the pressers and not necessarily heard anybody directly ask him. It's probably much more of an off-season question, but my guess would be Ime would say something like the peak Spurs, where it is everybody is part of the offense, and it's get it up the floor, get into something, move it, ping, ping, cuts, moving the ball, and everything's happening very quickly. And one thing I will say, too, is I would just like to see someone who can just get the ball up the floor and initiate. I know it sounds silly to say Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown bringing the ball up the floor, but even when it's against token pressure, it's just more reps on them that it's more wear and tear. It just wears you down. It's just, so get somebody who can get the ball up the floor. I like what you said too about the defense of Marcus Smart and, is that offsetting that. One thing that I really crystallized for me is, and it was in the last year, and it's odd to say this, but it was with the New York Knicks. When they made the playoffs a couple years ago as a number 4 seed, it was because their defense was super, super special. Then they, rightly so, said, we need to improve the offense. But they improved the offense at the expense of taking away some defense. And once you did that, you didn't improve your offense enough that it became special. And now your defense wasn't special. And you had this team that just, quite frankly, wasn't very good. What I don't want to see is for all the people who scream and yell about, Marcus, they're not going to win a title with Marcus Smart and the turnovers, and they need a point guard. And I've seen people turn around like, go get Mike Conley. I don't dislike Mike Conley, but let's say you just swapped Smart and Conley. You've now downgraded your defense to a point where is it still going to be special? Are you still going to be number one in the league? And it's weird because they didn't finish number one in the league by a huge margin. But to get to number one in the league, they were number one in the league by a huge margin for half the season, roughly. To get there, like, is that where you want to be? And I know people will say, but the defense wasn't the problem. The offense was in the finals. And I can't disagree with that. That is true. But yeah, if you make the defense even part of an issue, now you're having to make up that much more ground offensively. And it just becomes a challenge. So I'm with you on that of like where does Ime want the playmaking to come from? My guess would be a little bit of everybody. And I think they're set up to do that. They have and I can say this as somebody who watches the entire league, they have the best collection of playmaking bigs in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they have the best playmaking, because that's Nikola Jokic. It's not even close. I'm not stupid. But collection of playmaking bigs. They've got the best ones. Horford's a great passer. Rob, all I want is 3 or 4 design plays every game where it's designed for Rob to pick out a cutter.
Yeah.
Like it's just, he's good at it.
So good at it.
Yep. Yeah. And then Grant Williams is a really good passer who just doesn't get to show it off all that often. Even Daniel Tice, for what his other limitations are, is pretty good. And part of that comes from, as a big in Europe, if you can't pass, if you can't at least hit somebody on a backdoor cut, you can't play.
Yeah.
Right. So he knows, he knows what he's doing there. So I want to see, let's take some of that playmaking burden off Tatum and Brown by putting it on others. It doesn't have to be a point guard. It can be. I think Marcus can run some stuff. I think Peyton Pritchard, where his game will improve the most in the next couple of years, is as a playmaker. But I don't like, we don't need to go crazy. And the funny thing too is, I'll just add with, there's a lot today of go get Bradley Beal. But Bradley Beal's not a point guard. Mm-hmm. And all I know to be the number one thing I know to be 100% true about the Boston Celtics is they are worse when you have a guard that's high usage that takes the ball out of Tatum and Brown's hands. We saw it with Kyrie. We saw it with Kemba. I liked Kyrie when he was in Boston. I really liked Kemba. I still love Kemba. I think he's one of the best guys in the entire league. Team just wasn't as good when you took the ball out of those two's hands. I don't want that. I don't want a repeat of that just because it's a name and a guy who has a 90 plus 2K rating. Like, I don't care about that. Like, I'm building a real actual basketball team. So let's, they don't need to go crazy. Build out your depth. Be smart about it. Go hit targeted guys. I'm a little more concerned than you on, I don't want too many guys. I don't want to relive 2019 where you had 12 guys who all wanted to play. But I think you can get through that, with resting guys, sitting guys, and spotting guys minutes. But yeah, and I tend to be on the same page as you as give me one more guy than one too few. Let Ime figure that out. Right. I also think he's a different coach who is not that Brad was a bad coach by any means, because he wasn't. But I think Ime is very good at, he'll throw an arm around a guy and be like, hey, it's not your week. It's not your month. But we need you. We'll need you in January. We'll need you here. And, and I think guys will trust in that.
There's also, like, some of this can happen at the trade deadline too. Like, there's also that. And if they do, like, let's say my for some reason, my plan actually comes to fruition and they go out and they get all these guys, probably, if Brad Stevens is listening to me, then we're both out of jobs, so, but that's the way I want things to go right now. At least my initial thought. Okay. If you get one guy too many and it ends up not working, you can make the move at the deadline.
Yeah. They did that to some extent.
It was Schroeder. They did that exact same thing. If you get too many guys, you can just tell the guy, say, okay, you know what? This didn't work out the way we thought it would. And so you're not getting the playing time that you thought. We'll do right by you. We'll move you. and just relax, don't rock the boat. And here's the big thing, honestly, and the biggest thing that I probably could have started this whole podcast with is individual improvement from the guys who are returning. That's going to be maybe the biggest factor in all of this. Like, we're talking about getting these guys some help, but what's Tatum going to come back like? What's Jaylen going to come back like? What's Marcus going to come back like? All of these guys, and I use the example of Grant Williams. Prior to this past season, people wanted to run him out of town, and he came into this past season a really different player. And so I think the improvement, the individual improvement from these guys is going to be the number one factor in how far the Celtics go. And then the moves that Brad Stevens can make now through, the end of July, that's going to supplement that. But, you're trying to help these guys out. And there is also the potential for, wow, these guys got so much better, or this guy added this element that we'd rather go with Grant doing this than the guy we signed. So we're going to have to come up with something different. So you are also going to have like some kind of chemistry, working out in the beginning of training camp too. So there's still a lot to figure out.
Yeah. And I think too, the cool thing is I'm glad you used the word supplement, because it feels like we're finally there where it's supplement the roster versus go get the guys to really be the guys. And this was Tatum and Brown's first year where it was their team. This was the first year they've learned, I guarantee they learned more this year than probably any other year they've had, except maybe rookie to sophomore year, right? Because that's just a different jump. But I think, this was their team. And then you had, it's just about fleshing it out around what you've got. There's no reason to go crazy here. You don't need to blow it up and change things. Yeah, if something amazing stumbles in your lap, right? But that's why you've given yourself these options. They're set up with really good contracts, tradable contracts, a bunch of movable pieces. They've got the TP. They've even got the ability to say, we use the TP and that needs to be used, right? Because that is an expiration date of July 18th, the Fournier one. So that one's got to be used by a time or it goes away. But you could use that in the MLE, keep Tice, and then use Tice as, all right, hey, we want to lower the tax bill, or we're going to really go all in. And then we'll use Tice's contract at the trade deadline or whatever, and see what the season comes with, because every season writes its own story as it goes. But yeah, it's fun to be in this position finally, where it's just about adding a few things versus, all right, we got to remake it again. It feels like this is finally, where this team wants to be. And I think it's great. It might not be the most exciting, fun fireworks summer, but I think at the end, if they do it right, we're going to look at it and be like, all right, they're 9-10 deep. And I feel pretty good about it. Let's we'll be ready for, late September to roll around.
Yeah. I think as I get through my whole plan, I think the Tice thing might be something that they do. Maybe they do hold off on. Maybe that is a better trade deadline thing. But you're right. You're 100% right. The beauty of this is that they have these options, and I'm 100% with you. I don't think this is go get a third star. I probably said this with you on the podcast before. This was an evaluation year. It turned into a championship run. And the evaluation out of that is pretty clear. You can do it behind Tatum and Brown. You don't need a third star. You need, and a lot of that is Ime in the system. And that's an amazing development that no one saw coming, that it was going to work that well. So yeah, I like that. I love where these guys are. It would have been nice if they had a championship, but hey, there's something about that fire that you know what? We're going to use this as fuel. If this becomes, in 5 years, wow, that one championship that they lost turned into 3 that they won, then I think everybody would be very happy with that. As opposed to, and there's no way to tell this, but you win the one and then you think, hey, I know what I'm doing now. We just won a championship, and then you never go back. So anyway, I gotta let you go, Keith. Appreciate you hopping on. We'll have you on much more here as the offseason rolls on. This is your wheelhouse, so love having you on, man. Everybody,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Keith. Thanks a lot, and thanks to you for listening and for watching. Appreciate you doing so. Tons of off-season content coming up. Draft is this week, which I honestly don't know a damn thing about this draft. Don't care, but hey, if the Celtics do something, I'll be here for you. But I will be here for you throughout all of this to guide you through the offseason. So subscribe if you are not subscribed yet. Watch the show on YouTube if you'd like to do that. And if you are a subscriber, please share the podcast. Help us out. Tell your friends. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.